Well, thank you all for being here tonight, and I'd like to welcome the new people to the class who haven't been here before. And this is the third class in a series of, we're not sure how many yet, probably about 4. We're going to try to keep it simple. Just for a really quick rundown for the new people, in the first class we introduced something called the science of Kilanta, and we got into the primary elements of Kilanta. That information and the video for that is available if you are interested. In the second class, we got into a little bit broader spectrum of the structure of the cosmic matrix, which is the basic energy structure within which our universe and all universes reside within the cosmos. We got into that a bit and what that means in terms of our evolution as individuals and as a collective, as a species. In this class, the third, what I would like to do is kind of pick up where we left off with the cosmic matrix. I'll cover that just a little bit for the people who have missed it, and I'm going to elaborate on that. Tonight, I would like to talk about where we came from. And when we understand a bit of where we came from, we'll be able to understand a bit more about where we're going. We're part of an evolving race, and that much our science has identified. But what that means, science has not been able to tell us because science doesn't know. There's a lot of speculation as to why we are here, and what does it mean to be human, and what are we connected to. Our scientific traditions tend to look backward in time to find relics to give us answers to those questions so we can understand our past, so perhaps we can understand more about our present and what it means to be human and what we are. Underneath all of those investigations, I do believe we're looking for the purpose of our existence, why we are here. So we look for where we came from, what are our roots, to understand some of what it means to be human now, so we understand maybe where we're going. In tonight's discussion, I'm going to present some information that was given to me by the Guardian Alliance that will be very controversial if you've been schooled in traditional earthly thinking. It is a history, and I'm going to leave out a lot simply because it would take a very long time to cover the whole history. But it's basically a history of our origins. And our origins are very different than what science has, at this time, formulated their ideas around. We did not come out of the apes. They came out of us, some of them. The early man, as our history has identified, some of them were connected to us. Others were completely independent races that evolved at different times with us, but that weren't connected to us. There's so much to our history that we have not had exposure to, and I would like to bring some of that information to you tonight as it was presented to me by the Guardian Alliance. In order to understand our history, we are also going to need to understand a little bit about the way a 15-dimensional universe works, because there is much more to the universe than our little solar systems, or even than the massive galaxies that we're able to see with our telescopes and the Hubble space, telescope and all that. There's much more to reality than even those massive things. So I'm going to give a bit of a structure of what it means to be in a 15-dimensional matrix. And then I am going to show you where our basic genetic pattern came from. And I hope I'm able to convey this information to you in a way that somehow, at least intuitively, I can pass on the meaning of this. There is a meaning within understanding these things through which our whole self-concept of a race is redefined. There's a part of ourselves that has been lost for centuries and centuries that has been completely unavailable to us, but intuitively we have sensed a longing for and a lack of. When I was presented with this information by the Guardian Alliance, something opened up in me, and it knew that this was true, and it reconnected me as an individual to the universe. And I was able to find a greater love for our species because I saw its place within the greater scheme of things. We were a grand species once. We were not apes. And to understand this, I hope I can convey somehow through what I discussed this evening, the beauty and the meaning of what it means to be human. And also, once we understand that, where we have come from, we will begin to understand what is our process of evolution, where we are going. Because it is not just that we got this far and we happen to evolve to this place and there's really no direction. Evolution is not aimless. There is a purpose, there is an agenda, there are probable versions of what any species can evolve into, but there is also a primary version of what a species was intended to become. And if we can understand that, perhaps for the first time in at least the last 10,000 years, if we can grasp what we were a part of and what we were evolving toward to become, we can really change the way we feel about ourselves and our race, and we can take an active hand in trying to reach that potential more quickly, because we do have a choice in how quickly we will or will not evolve. So for tonight's discussion, I will begin where I left off with the last class. This diagram here, pretty simple looking diagram, shows the basic conceptual structure of the energy systems for what is called the cosmic matrix. At the center of the cosmic matrix, and this is a center that we will not find no matter how far we send out a rocket ship into space. There's multi-levels of dimensions to go through before you could ever find the center. But there is a center to the cosmos. It is called the Unisci, using the Guardian's terms. It doesn't really matter what you call it. All of our religions have taught us about this using the concept of God, because it is not just an energy source through which the whole universe is continually and perpetually fed energy. It is a source of intelligent identity as well. It is energy identity. And everything in the universe is composed of portions of identity out of the Unisci. We are all composed of particles that are conscious units of the Unisci, which means we are all composed of particles of the consciousness of God. And that alone, for me, was a very moving concept. And it's very true. This is where science and religion comes together. Energy and identity go together. Identity is energy, and energy is identity. The central source of that is the Unisci, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it God, or you can call it the Unisci, or that great central source that we come out of. But it is there, and it creates and forms and holds together perpetually, forever and eternally, the entire electromagnetic structure that the rest of the universe is built upon. All right, out of the Unisci, there emanate 6 spirals of energy. 3 of them move in a clockwise rotation, and 3 move in a counterclockwise rotation. In the book, we get into detail on how this is formed and what those mean. But right now, I just want you to get the basic structure visually of what we are talking about when we talk about the cosmic matrix. Now, in each, there are basically 3 arms in the cosmic matrix. At the end of each end of the arms, there's something called a 15-dimensional matrix. And if you'll notice, there would be 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 15-dimensional matrices, or matrices, I believe it's pronounced. Okay. Now, we, in our Earth system, reside in one of those 6 15-dimensional matrices. And in the cosmic map, we would be in this arm, and in this part of the arm right down here. All right, it's going to be a long time before we as a species, or even as individuals, have to worry about evolving from here to here. Because right now, our process of evolution is taking place within this part down here, the 15-dimensional matrix. And now I want to basically show you a little bit about how the 15-dimensional matrices are formed. Okay, now, each one of those 6 15-dimensional matrices have within them 2 15-dimensional scales. If you'll notice, the dimensions run 1, 2, 3, and then there's a flip, which is an electromagnetic turn of sorts. Energy starts to move and spin in a different direction. But the basic understanding is to understand there are 15 dimensions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And there's one scale that you can conceptualize as running from bottom to top, and then there is another scale you can conceptualize as running in the opposite direction, where dimension 1 is the same place dimension 15 would be in this one. These run together, and they're actually superimposed over each other, so the dimensions flow through each other. So when I'm speaking of a 15-dimensional matrix that we're evolving in, we are evolving in one of these. Now, in our 15-dimensional scale, which would be this one, the energy particles, basically, even though we have them when we look under our microscopes, you will see particles that move clockwise or counterclockwise. The general flow of the microparticles in our system moves counterclockwise, while in the parallel system move clockwise. So you have 2 counter-rotating 15-dimensional scales superimposed within each other. Right now, in our 15-dimensional scale, we are right around in the third dimension. But there's really more to it. That's where our consciousness is stationed as individuals. We are focusing in and perceiving through three-dimensional perception. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in terms of the dimensions below it, because it's more than just three-dimensional perception that we're seeing when we look out here. Okay, so I just want you to understand the basic layout of what a 15-dimensional matrix is. Now, this was material that I covered before. Now we're going to go into a bit new material. If I can do this without knocking down the light. There we go. Okay. My discussion tonight is going to get into where we came from, where we're going as a race. All right. Here again is our 15-dimensional scale within our 15-dimensional matrix. Okay. In the 15-dimensional scale, there are something called harmonic universes. A harmonic universe is formed by three-dimensional bands and how they relate to each other. And in between every set of three-dimensional bands, there's something called a repulsion zone, which is an area of magnetism that literally forces the dimensions away from each other. So each harmonic universe will become a sort of spherical reality field that is separate from the one above it. They have a different rate of pulsation of particles. So even though they are taking place in the same space, individuals focused in one harmonic universe will not be able to perceive the activity or individuals focused in another one. And this is the basic structure of what we are living in here on planet Earth in the galaxy that we know. We are in something called the first harmonic universe. It is composed of dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Dimensions 4, 5, and 6, which are the ones that are the next up in the dimensional scale, they would represent our next stage of evolution. They represent the second harmonic universe. The third harmonic universe would be represented by the center, which is dimensions 7, 8, and 9. That is the harmonic universe that every one of our consciousness had to pass through in order to expand itself into the 15-dimensional matrix. Through the third harmonic universe, we will also be able to leave the 15-dimensional matrix. The 15-dimensional matrix is what gives us the quality of perception we call time and growth through time. When we evolve through this scale and return through here, we enter a level of eternal existence that really can't even be described in time terms, in linear language. But it's a very beautiful place to be, and it is really the objective of all of our spiritual traditions. They have been trying to, in their conceptual way, lead us to the evolution through this scale and back through the center, through the third harmonic universe. Now, there is also the fourth harmonic universe here, which is composed of dimensions 10, 11, and 12. And then there's the final fifth harmonic universe, which is composed of dimensions 13, 14, and 15. So, for our discussion, we really just need to understand that there are 5 different harmonic universes within the 15-dimensional matrix that we're a part of. The only ones we really need to be concerned about now are the one we're in and the one we're going to be going to once we evolve beyond the one we're in. We are in the first harmonic universe. We are going to be going, as we evolve as a species, into the second harmonic universe. Now, in some of our traditions, we have stories of heaven. And this is what they are referring to. They are referring to a place that does exist, and it has matter, just like our world has matter, but the matter is less dense. We do have bodies there in the second harmonic universe. But our stories of heaven were trying to lead us to an understanding of how to get to the second harmonic universe, for it is much more beautiful there. Energy is much finer, consciousness is much clearer, beings are much more evolved, so we don't have the problems and the hurtful conditions that we often face here. It is a heaven compared to where we are now. All right, the harmonic universes also represent different time cycles, which means the particles that things and consciousness are composed of in those universes pulsate at different rates of speed compared to each other. In our universe, in our first harmonic universe, we are in what they call the Turaneusiam time cycle. That's the slowest moving, the slowest pulsating of the 5 harmonic universes. The next one, and as we evolve out of the Turaneusiam time cycles and move into the second harmonic universe, we will be evolving into a time cycle called the Andunk time cycle, which is the next fastest moving. And they progressively go up. The fifth one would be the fastest moving. So we actually progress from the slowest moving time cycles to the lower harmonic universes up to the top, and then we have to come back again, slow down again, to go back through the center. And that's really the process of the overall evolution. But right now all we need to worry about are the two time cycles, the Andunk time cycle that we are headed toward, and the Taran time cycle that we are in right now. The most important thing at this time, I believe, for us to understand about the relationship between those two harmonic universes is that our planet originally came from here. Earth came from here. And the planets in our solar system that we have identified, and there are two that we have not yet identified, they have all come out of a planet in a condition that happened to a planet in the second harmonic universe. There was, about 560 trillion years ago, and the Guardians tell me this is the closest translation of time they can get. We are dealing with two different time cycles. It's very hard to translate amounts of time from one system in relation to the other, but in our time terms, in our time concepts, it would be about 560 trillion years ago. There was a planet formed within the second harmonic universe, and that planet's name was Terra. And Terra evolved for many, many millions and millions of years. Now, when we're dealing with the second harmonic universe and Terra, many, many of the visitors to our planet right now that you hear people talk about in like alien visitation and all of these kind of things, and some people don't think they're real because they can't imagine where they could come from. We know that they're not on Mars. We have, telescopes up there. We'd see them. Well, a lot of them, and most of them, are coming from the second harmonic universe. That's why you can send anything you want up in space to try to find life here. You're looking in the wrong harmonic universe, so you probably won't find it. You have to go into this harmonic universe to find it. So what happened a very long time ago on the planet called Terra, about 560 million years ago, there was a race of beings seated on this planet. The race was called the Turaneusiam, and they were a very, very special race. They were kind of like the babies of the universe. The Turaneusiam race was created by taking the genetic strains of all of the other type of beings that existed within all of the other dimensional systems and harmonic universes, taking them and splicing together the best of the best in order to form a super prototype. And what the beings who created us wanted to create was a species that could embody not only a soul, but an oversoul. It could embody the consciousness of 12 of the 15 dimensions. Most body forms, either here or in the second harmonic universe, can only embody within them a certain amount of energy identity. After a certain amount of energy identity is added in, the gene code can't tolerate anymore, and that's when the form would transmute and the consciousness would move into and evolve into a state of pure consciousness being, where it no longer needed a biology. The Turaneusiam race was created to be a living library for the 15-dimensional matrix. It would contain the gene codes of 12, within biology, it would contain 12 levels of dimensional systems. And there were contributors of, I think they said about several 100 million different species contributed gene code product to create this new species. This species was viewed as godlings. We were created to eventually become creator gods, and we were revered highly by those other extraterrestrial and second harmonic civilizations who wanted to see themselves be able to expand and evolve beyond their own potentials of their species. So we were created with a lot of high hopes, and the Turaneusiams are who we originally were. And this is a surprise to most people, because most people don't even know the second harmonic universe exists. So about 560 million years ago, the universe got together, if you want to look at it that way. Different biologies got together and contributed their genetic material to create this super race of beings. And they succeeded. They created the Turaneusiam race. They were second harmonic beings. There were gender delineations at certain periods of time. There were other periods of time when there was no gender to them. They did not reproduce by mammalian means as we do. They produced through energy replication. They didn't need to do the mammalian thing. They were a very, very special breed in the sense that they had 12 strands of DNA. We have 2 strands of DNA. Can you imagine what it might mean to have the potentialities of 12 strands. What abilities would that give us? What would our minds be like? What would our comprehension, our power, what would we be like with 12 strands? Compared to what we know ourselves as now, we would be godlike. We would have abilities that we could only dream of having now. And that is what the Turaneusiam race did have. And for many, many hundreds of thousands of years, they evolved very well. They were created to be the guardians for the planet Terra. They were in charge of making sure the energy balances of the whole planetary system stayed intact. They were responsible for creating harmonious relationships with the other galaxies and the other planets in the galaxies of the second harmonic universe, because there were many, unlike it is here in the first harmonic universe within our solar system, within the Terran solar system, there were many active extraterrestrial civilizations, and it was just a much larger intergalactic community there. The Turaneusians were raised to become mediators between species because they had the genetic codes that should enable them to be able to identify with every species. So they had a big job to play. They were supposed to be guardians. They were supposed to be mediators. They were really supposed to help the harmonious evolution of all species in the universe. Well, they evolved for quite a long time. They evolved for about 10 million years there. But there were also a lot of things happening in their culture. I won't spend a lot of time on that tonight because it gets into, just like we have little politics things happening here, they had it happening there too on planetary levels. There were certain groups from other planetary systems that didn't like what was going on in one place, and there was a lot of conflicts and those kind of things. At certain points in the evolution of the Turaneusiam, there were other extraterrestrial forces that weren't originally wanting to participate in the Turaneusiam experience, in the experiment of creating the Turaneusiam, that decided they wanted to take it in their own direction. So they came and they interbred with some of them. They distorted the gene code of the original Turaneusiam. And because of that distortion, there was a certain clarity of consciousness that was lost by the Turaneusiam. Some of their race began to digress. They began to lose touch with, they had a consciousness that felt total at one-ment with God. And it was a state of love and joy and beauty that's very hard to describe. When they got involved with some of the other extraterrestrial groups that did not have that high of a gene code, it reduced their own. And it also reduced their ability to identify that strongly with the God presence, with the harmonious operations of the universe. So some of them evolved into a species called the Atlanteans. Not the Atlanteans, but Atlanteans. There's only one T in that name. That was where our original race memories of Atlantis actually came from. It came from Harmonic 2 in Atlantia. They began to have problems with what we would term here ego. They began to see themselves as very powerful, and they began to see power as something not to be used just in love and in service to the universe, but as something that they could collect and use against other beings. There was a large group of them in power in the Atlantean civilization. There was a group of them called the Templar Solar Initiates, who were appointed as the guardian keepers of certain of the energy dynamics of planet Terra. It was a very, very sacred position, and it was given to them by something called the Sirian Council from the planetary star systems of Sirius. They had given them, because the ones from Sirius were part of the parentage of the Turaneusiam race, and they had entrusted their children with this very, very sacred job. Well, the Templar Solar Initiates goofed up big time, to put it mildly. Our Atlantean memories, which we all have at some level, deep down in our gene code, are the memories of what the Turaneusiam did to Terra in their abuse of power. And what they did was they used certain crystalline technologies, which are chelantic technologies, as was discussed in some of the other classes that I gave. They used them in a way that caused implosions and then explosions within the energetic grid of planet Terra. Part of planet Terra, not the whole thing, but part of it broke off. Its energetic form dismantled instead of being together. When a planet or a being begins to dismantle itself energetically, that is the opposite of evolution. It is de-evolution. It is moving backwards and digressing into something less than what it was, rather than evolving into something that it was supposed to become.
Can you stop and fix that?
You want to stop?
It's okay. Go ahead.
Well, it's blinding us now. Finding you?
I'll take a break and fix the light.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We were discussing before our short break there how the Turaneusiam race from the second harmonic universe began to digress and abuse power, and how because of that abuse of power that the planet Terra underwent a tragedy where a part of its substance was literally blown apart. Now, where did that substance go? It left the second harmonic universe. It dismantled itself in energy terms, and it fell in vibration. It fell in speed. Its particles began to pulse slower. It ended up in the first harmonic universe. The fragments of Terra became our solar system. And there are 12 planets. One of them imploded a long time ago. It was called Maldak. And we have an asteroid belt now, I believe, where that once was. There's another planet that hasn't been discovered yet, and it's called Nibiru. And that's considered basically the 12th planet. And the sun is also considered a planet. So when the fragment came off of Terra from the second harmonic universe, it came into the first harmonic universe, and it created our Big Bang. The numbers are a bit off as far as where our scientists think the Big Bang occurred. It did occur, but not exactly for the reasons they think. And the planet existed before that Big Bang occurred. But what we are calling our solar system and the planets here were actually part of the planet Terra from the second harmonic universe. So our universe came into being this way, our solar system came into being this way, not our galaxy, just our solar system. The souls of the people who were on that portion of Terra when it exploded and disintegrated, they were killed. But when their bodies are killed, where does their consciousness go? Because they were part of an explosion, the energy structures, what we call Partikite grids, of their bodies and of their consciousness were also ripped apart. They dropped in vibration. They also ended up down here in the first harmonic universe. And if it were not for what was attempted and succeeded after that occurrence, those souls would have become part of what's called the unified field of energy within dimensions 1, 2, and 3. They would have become the firmament and the substance that other species would evolve with and through, rather than retaining a sentient identity of their own. They would lose all complete orientation of consciousness as a Turaneusiam. And they would start their evolutionary process from a lower level than they originally started it in the first place. Because the evolutionary strain of the Turaneusiam did not start down here. It started in the second harmonic universe. They were thrown all the way back down to the first, and they would have had to start basically as subatomic particles that make up, basic matter substance here. In order to preserve the strain of the Turaneusiam, and also in order to salvage those souls, instead of making them begin again as something that they were intended to be much better than at the time, much higher level of evolution, there was an experiment tried, and it was called the Turaneusiam 2 experiment. Now I'll get into this a little bit in a minute. Just want to see if I'm jumping ahead a little, because I think I might be. We'll go back real quick to the Turaneusiams from Terra, the Turaneusiam 1 experiment. These are some of the genetic contributors to the race. From harmonic 3, which is the 7, 8, and 9, there are something called the Lyrans. Now, they're in a state of being that is not physical as we know physical. It's almost plasmoid, where it's kind of like a gaseous, liquidous type substance, but they are fully conscious and sentient, even much more than we are, yet is not a type of physical existence that we would identify as physical. Well, the harmonic 3 Lyrans were basically the founders. They came up with the idea for the whole Turaneusiam experiment, and they are the ones that kind of motivated other beings within the universal structures and within the other harmonic universes to participate in this experience. And they served as overseers for the Turaneusiam of harmonic 2. Now, in harmonic 2, there were many different populations on different planets there. They used names that we are familiar with here to give us an idea of the orientation of how, when we see a star system up here in our skies, there's a consciousness affiliated with that, and it has a connection to a series of planets and consciousness within the second harmonic universe. So they use names that are familiar to us, like the Sirian star system, the Pleiades. Those are our names. They use them so we understand the connection. All right, so in harmonic 2, in D4, 5, and 6, There were also Sirian beings, what would be considered consciousness that are connected to our planets, our Sirian planetary systems. They were called Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were part of the genetic contributors to the Turaneusiam race. They were also part of the teachers and overseers for the Turaneusiam until they evolved to become sentient and adult in their own right. So we had a very strong, as Turaneusiam, we had a very strong relationship with the Sirian Anunnaki in the second harmonic universe. The Pleiadians were also part of the genetic contributors to our Turaneusiam race. The Lyran Elohim were also part of it, and the Elohim appear in our biblical stories. They are beings. They are of an extraterrestrial nature. They came out of the Harmonic 3 Lyran founders. They're one of the first forms created in Harmonic 2 by the Lyran founders, and they are very godlike compared to even the Turaneusians. They contributed quite a bit to our genetic makeup. So they had a very vested interest in how our species evolved. You have a question?
No, I just want to make a point there. The Elohim in Hebrew literally means those that came from above.
Does it?
Yeah.
That's where the translation is.
Right. Okay, so we are directly genetically related to the Elohim. There were also beings in Harmonic 2 from what we would consider the Orion Vega star systems. They contributed genetic material. Also from the Andromeda, the Arcturan, and many others. There are many other systems we don't even have names for to compare to what they have there. But we have many, many genetic contributors. But these are some of the main ones. And why they want us to understand that? They want us to understand that when we look up into the sky, and when we see our stars and see our Pleiadian clusters and our Sirian planets, there is a direct energetic relationship to the consciousness that exists on those planets in the second harmonic and our gene code. We are basically an extraterrestrial gene code. And that is very amazing to many people because we're taught to believe that extraterrestrials don't exist. And when it comes down to that, it's saying we don't exist because we are the extraterrestrials. We just happen to be residing for the last many millions of years on planet Earth. It is important to understand our connection to the stars because it's not just a hypothetical thing. It's not just an astrology thing. It's a literal thing that's happening in our gene code. And a part of our genes, in the little tiny filaments that compose our genes, vibrate in the same way that certain of those star clusters in our skies vibrate. There's a direct energetic link, and it helps us to create a sense of home when we realize that. We start to feel really connected to the universe when you start to realize that part of your own self. And you can feel it. It's an intuitive thing, but you can feel it there once you start working with it. So these are some of the contributors to the Turaneusiam 1 gene code. Okay? And as I said before, they were created to embody the full oversoul. And we were supposed to hold the cellular memory records of 12 of the 15 dimensions. So we were created to be a pretty awesome guardian race. And that's kind of nice. It's a lot nicer to realize that than to think that, gee, we were apes and we grew up to be this for some reason. There was a purpose to this. There's a purpose to our whole species. And we haven't gotten rid of that purpose. Whether or not we acknowledge where we came from, that purpose still lives within ourselves. And it will still move us forward in time. And if we become more aware of that purpose, we can make that moving through time toward what we were supposed to become happen more quickly. Okay, the Turaneusiam 1 race evolved on planet Terra in the second harmonic for about 10 million years. And they had, upsurgences, points where it was their heights, and then they digress a little, and then they come up again. And the final digression was when they blew part of the planet apart and ended up down here. Basically, the ones that were left on the planet Terra were migrated to other planets because the planet was made uninhabitable. It went through pole reversal, it went through conditions, energetically speaking, that its climate, you could not live on a planet that had gone through what Terra had gone through at that time. So most of the Turaneusiam had been migrated into other second harmonic planets before the explosion took place because they knew it was coming and they couldn't stop it. The ones who stayed are the ones who ended up here. They're the ones who basically became us. Okay? Okay, and it was about 550 million years ago, I believe they said, that Terra went through this explosion. where, so 550 million years ago is really when the planets in our solar system entered this harmonic universe. Okay, after our planet had been, let's say, created here, or relocated here is more like it, after Earth, Terra, which is, we are still Terra, but they delineate us now as Earth, being a part of what Terra was. After Earth had ended up here, it was not possible to have life on the planet for quite a long time. It took time before even green things could grow, or any of that. Firmament had to be built up. It takes a while for a planet to stabilize itself where it can sustain life after it goes through something like that. About 250 million years ago, the planet became able to sustain life, and it became a valuable piece of real estate to the beings in the Harmonic 2 universe. There were large numbers of them. Now, they had all cooperated on this Turaneusiam experiment, and many of them were very disgusted with the whole experiment because they saw how badly it turned out. There were certain races that did not want to see this experiment go again. They did not want this race restarted because of all the trouble we'd caused in Harmonic 2. They said, it was a bad race, the genetic strain didn't work, and they just wanted the territory of Earth now for their own experiments, for, creating other types of life forms. And there were others, the Syrians among them, and the Elohim among the strongest supporters, that said, no, we want this race to be reseeded again. We'll do it differently. We'll make it happen more slowly, where not so much power is given so quickly. We'll guard the strains to make sure that this distortion in the genetic code doesn't happen. But this race should be able to grow again. And there was a big division in our original genetic contributors. Some of them did not want to continue. Others did. And there was a war that took place over planet Earth, whether or not this race would be reseeded to give the consciousness, the souls that had ended up down here from that implosion, a chance to re-evolve back into what they had been. If that chance was not given us, we would evolve as consciousness, but we would never become what we had started out being. We would be kind of lost in the fields of time to evolve into all sorts of different forms, and it's like losing the mold that you were made from. It's a sad path for a soul who had that level of cognition once. When you knew yourself as a Turaneusiam, to find yourself as a piece of rock on planet Earth, and having no clue as to how to ever put your consciousness back together again into what you were, is a very sad predicament. And the saddest part is the people involved, or the souls involved in that, wouldn't even know it. They wouldn't have the level of consciousness to understand what had happened to them. Because we were loved by many of our parents from the Harmonic 2 universe, they fought a war. They said, we are going to reseed them here, and we are going to give this species a chance to come back to what it was, the ones who had fallen out of the species. Because some of the Turaneusiams evolved just fine on other planets in the second harmonic. We'd call them extraterrestrials now, but they were actually us. But the ones that ended up down here, we were loved enough to where we were given a second chance. The Syrian councils were primarily responsible for this, and they work also through the first harmonic Syrian star system. There are levels of activity taking place in the Sirius star system. There are civilizations that exist there, but they're cloaked. They're in the third dimension, or in the first harmonic universe with dimensions 1, 2, 3, but they're off just a little bit frequency-wise, where we would have to know the frequency keys in order to go there and find them. But they are there. They're even in our first harmonic universe. Some of them are Anunnaki, which were Syrian strains. The Anunnaki are a Syrian root race from the second harmonic universe. The Anunnaki were appointed as one group of overseers to watch this experiment once the Earth territory had been won. The Elohim were also another group of overseers who did the same, and all of them worked through the Lyran councils of the founders in D7. They worked with them and under the guidance of them. The Pleiades, at certain points, did not want to continue this experiment. They abandoned us for a while, and they fought with the Syrians over letting us grow. And eventually, the Syrians and the Pleiadians came to an agreement where they decided, okay, we'll go for this, we'll be supportive, and we'll help this species to re-evolve. So the Pleiadians are now on our side, if you want to look at it that way. They are helping us to evolve. And at this point in time, there are many other things happening with the Earth, which I'm not going to go into them. That's a whole other class. But all of these parents that we came from, their species are still alive and well as we speak in the second harmonic universe. Many of them are sending representatives to communicate with us and to help us through the times that are coming, because we're facing some interesting changes on a planetary level, and not just because of our own civilization. So they are. Did you have a question, Michael? What?
Since Tara exploded and formed our solar system, and the assumption is that Earth was just one piece of that explosion.
Yes.
So are there beings on the other planets in some of the situations? Are we congregated here on Earth?
Okay, right now we're congregated here on Earth. In other space-time coordinates in the first harmonic universe, after that explosion took place and the solar system here was formed, at various times on various other planets in our solar system here, there were life and civilization evolving. Some of them were Turaneusiam, but not in the pure sense strain. They weren't reseeded. This is where they were reseeded into the Earth, what we call Earth.
So when the explosion happened, the stuff that became the solar system was barren, is what you're saying, and then it was reseeded?
Yeah, and it was reseeded here with a lot of different things, not just our race, but there were a lot of different ones contributed, different types of animal forms, plant forms, those kind of things. Most of them did come from the second harmonic universe, where they would bring patterns in and reseed them down here to create a version of them in the lower harmonic in order to bring life and more productivity to this area. But they have said that in our solar system there was life on different planets, such as Mars, such as Venus, and Jupiter, I believe they said, and definitely Nibiru. So there were cultures, but they weren't our cultures. Some of them were Anunnaki, completely, like that didn't have anything to do with the Turaneusiams. Some of them were other ones from the first harmonic universe, because even in our harmonic universe, not in our solar system right now, but way out in our galaxy, there are planets that do sustain life in various different forms, some of them biological. All right, but for tonight, what I'd like to keep focused on is basically just how we got here and where we came from. There's a million questions that can be asked, with this stuff in the solar system, and I'm going to try to stick to where I'm going with this so I can get to the end, which gets into us personally. Okay. Okay, so about 250 million years ago, the electric wars, they call them, were fought, and the planet was again made a mess of for, I believe they said, several 100,000 years passed before it could again sustain the experiment, but at least they won the territory, and they sat through waiting for the Earth to become hospitable again, where it could sustain life. And the Syrian Confederation, basically, is what won those electric wars. They fought with various factions, one of them called the Dracon, which are from the Vega star systems. And they have D3 versions of Dracon, and they also have first harmonic versions of Dracon, and also second harmonic versions. So these wars did take place way before we were here. They won back the territory, and then they seeded what's called the T2 race, the Turaneusiam 2. That's us. Turaneusiam 2 were the 12 tribes, or what are considered the 12 tribes of the human race. About 2,500,000 years ago, they were brought here and reseeded on the planet. They were created from the Turaneusiam 1 pure strain genetic code. They took that 12-strand DNA that the Turaneusiam 1s from harmonic 2 had. They broke it into 12 different pieces, and then they polarized each to make 2 strands. It created 12 separate tribes of beings, which all came out of one primary race, which were the Turaneusiam 1 from the harmonic 2 universe. Okay. The 12 strands were separated and polarized, and the polarization is what gave us genderization. And this is where our Adam and Eve stories, what they're really trying to explain to us in very metaphorical terms, was how we were created. I mean, we get this story of being created out of Adam's rib and all of those things. What they were really cloaking in those stories was the fact that at one point we were not gender polarized. And in the beginning of life on our planet here, planet Earth, when our Turaneusiam 2 race was seeded here, we, Adam and Eve, were thus created out of the one primary strand of DNA. So you have 12 tribes, each with one strand of DNA, polarize the DNA, and you have 2 genders operating through each of the 12 tribes. Okay. Right, the purpose of the 12 tribes was to evolve over a long period of time in the first harmonic universe, to reassemble, slowly reassemble through the gene pool and through the progression of races and evolution over very large expanses of time. We were supposed to grow back into the 12-strand prototype that we had come out of. This was not going to happen quickly. This was going to be millions of years of evolution that we had to go through here before we could get to that point. We were kept under very close eye by the Elohim, and we were messed with by the Anunnaki. They decided, you know, we'd rather use them as like kind of slave labor and that kind of thing. So the Anunnaki and the Elohim had a falling out. The Elohim tried to protect us, but they wouldn't let us evolve too quickly because they didn't want to create another mess like that was created in the second harmonic universe. So we were actually repressed in a lot of ways. They did something. Our gene code started to evolve, and it started to evolve rapidly. We started to build a lot of those, put together a lot of the separated gene codes that were in the original 12 strand. And they took out, the Elohim took out of our gene codes certain key elements that would allow other gene codes to plug in. They didn't remove them completely. They took them out of the operating DNA strands and they put them in to I believe, the nucleus of the cell. Our scientists call them junk DNA. They're little particles of what resemble DNA, and they just seem to be there. That's our missing memory. It is our missing DNA. It's not missing. It's just unplugged. The Elohim were the primary force that created this distortion. It's a genetic mutation that was done to us on purpose to make us evolve less quickly, because they were very, very concerned. They watched us again in our race since we were seeded on this planet. Again, certain parts of us went into animal digression. We interbred with animals, some parts of us, and distorted the gene code again. So we were creating distortions in the gene code. The Elohim did not want to see that distortion added to the acceleration and building back into the 12th strand, because God knows what it would create. It would create some kind of very powerful possible monster. So they unplugged us in order to try to rebalance and purify the genetic strain. They didn't do it in a real fair way, though. They had certain favorites that had certain of the Turaneusiam 2 races, the 12 tribes, had more of the Lyran strain of the Turaneusiam gene codes within them. They favored the Lyrans because they were the founders, and the Elohim were very close to the Lyrans. So they weren't really fair to a lot of the other 12 tribes that didn't contain, that didn't carry more of the Lyran strain. So a lot of there's information coming out now in our times through some communicated, not my channeled material or anything like that, but other people's channeled material, that the Elohim were actually a negative extraterrestrial force. They were, but they weren't. We would not still be alive today if they hadn't been here, because they kept our gene code alive when we almost digressed this time through animal interbreeding to the point where we would have completely negated ourselves again. So they did keep us going, but they have repressed our evolution to some degree, out of protection for the rest of the universe, basically. And they are trying to help us now. They are willing to communicate. They are willing to help us understand the process. But they have a very strident set of spiritual rules before they will allow certain things to happen. And they are a force to contend with. People, a lot of times in our world, don't realize these beings are real. They seem like mythological creatures from our ancient history. Our ancient history sometimes knew more about what was taking place in the second harmonic universe. They knew it existed, and we don't know that yet. So the stories, sometimes it's good to listen to some of the old stories about the Elohim and the other things, because they are real, and they're describing real extraterrestrial races from Harmonic 2 that are still influencing us today. Okay, let's see. Okay, so basically, we were put here to evolve over a long period of time. Through this process, all of the souls that fell, this was the fall of man, we fell from Terra down into this system, we would be able to evolve back up into the second harmonic universe, back into our proverbial heaven, where we had come from. This was done in a way where the 12 tribes were broken into what's called 7 root races. Okay? These root races would not appear all at the same time on the planet. First one would come, and then the next one that had a higher genetic code would come, and then the next one with a higher genetic code. And it would progress until the highest, the 7th, would finally come, and that would have the ability to embody the full 12 strands of DNA. All right? There were 7 root races, and there were 5 what they call cloistered races. The cloistered races, and they haven't given me the names of all of these, only one. The cloistered races were special in that they were allowed to hold within their genetic code the whole pattern of what they call the silicate matrix, the 12-strand DNA pattern. So at any time when these 7 root races were evolving, there would be at least the presence of one cloistered race that would keep alive in the gene pool the full 12-strand DNA pattern. They were guardians. The cloistered races were appointed as guardians of the original prototype, and they would appear within each phase of development. There are races today among us who carry the silicate matrix. Okay? Now each of us carry some part of the silicate matrix, because the silicate matrix is basically the Turaneusiam 1 genetic strain. Each of us carry some part of it. But the ones who are of cloistered families, of genetic lines, will carry more portions of it. Very few people on the planet right now carry all of it, but some are very close. Okay? The 7 root races. Now, these are names that several of the guardian groups call them different things, which is not useful to me because it makes it more complicated. They said that these names were used elsewhere, so go ahead and use those rather than try to translate some of their more strange-sounding names. They called the first race the Polarians, and the second race the Hyperbornians. Both of these were not as physical as we are right now. They were more of like a ghost-like composition of matter. They were conscious, and they lived as a race, and they had the reality in the first harmonic universe, but they were not as fully physical as we are. The first fully physical race they call the Lumanians, and they said it's not the Lumerians, it's the Lumanians. They existed for a period of time here on the planet, and they didn't give me the dates. They've just given me this material, so I don't have a lot of the technical data on dates and where they were and all that. But these were the first ones to appear out of the reseeding of the Turaneusiam 1 race. When the 12 tribes were seeded, this was the first physical race to appear on this planet. And they evolved for many thousands of years, I believe. The next root race were the Atlanteans. Now they call them these because on Terra there was a place, I believe it was called Lumia and Atlantia, and that's where these strains came out of. The first root race carried a stronger version of the genetic codes from the Lumia Terra strain, and then the Atlanteans carried the Atlantean one. So there's a connection to these root races and the races of Turaneusiam that had been on Terra. All right, the 5th root race is called the Aryans. They didn't tell me why it's called that, and it's not the Aryans as Hitler described it. It has nothing to do with that. It is who we are now, all of us. And I mean, you know, every race that's on the planet now is part of the Aryan root race. And we represent the 5th stage in the processing of the 7 root races on the planet. We technically have 2 more to go as souls, which means most of us would experience reincarnation within the 6th root race and then in the 7th in order to build into our consciousness the full 12 codes that would allow us to remanifest ourselves within the 2nd harmonic universe. But there are shortcuts, and that's what we're going to get into tonight. We don't necessarily have to evolve. It would probably take, they said, about 20,000 years to go through these other 2 root races as a species. It will take the species that long. There are things happening with the planet that may cut the experiment short. So they're teaching us how to accelerate this process. So we do get a chance to evolve back into what we once were, Turaneusiam. Okay, they call them the Maruvians. These are just beginning to come into being here. There are humans that are carrying what they're calling Maruvian codes within their gene structures. They will have a bit more easy access to things we call psychic abilities, to strange abilities that seem superhuman. compared to us. The souls that are able to hold that kind of gene code are just starting to come in. Some of them are being born now as babies and that kind of stuff. It will take many, many years for that to be the dominant race. Right now, the Aryan race is the dominant race. What they call the Paradisians, some people here call it the Paradisians, I've heard of it before, theirs are actually the Turaneusiams. That will be the 7th. When we finally get to the point where we have evolved into the 7th group race gene code, we will be back to what we are. Because the cloistered races, who have kept within our gene pool the whole time, the original pattern, once we have hit the 7th group race, we'll be able to plug in all of the genetic codes that are carried by the cloisters, and we will transmute ourselves as a race over large expanses of time back into the Turaneusiam 1 prototype that we came out of. We don't really have to worry about doing that right now as a race, because it's not going to happen for a very long time. But there are things that can be done to accelerate the process for each one of us here, and that's what's exciting about it. We are not as far removed from our DNA as we think we are. We have more control over what it does than we're taught by science. Science doesn't understand the chelantic element to DNA, which was covered in the first 2 classes, a bit of that, where we got into the structures that DNA is composed of. All right, we can accelerate the process of our evolution by activating those dormant DNA codes that are stored in the cell nucleus. There are certain things we can do to begin this process. One of the first things we need to do in order to clear our present genetic strain to be able to make this transmutation into the higher genetic strain is we have to clear out the mutation that was done to us by the Elohim, and also a few others that were done to us by some other extraterrestrial groups that just decided to mess with the species and see what they could do a long time ago. There are certain genetic distortions we carry right now that we need to get out of our way in order to begin plugging in the rest of our DNA. Okay. Now, I won't kid you and say it's an easy process. It's just 1, 2, 3. Here's what DNA looks like and here's what you have to do. There is a lot of work that has to be done to get your mind to the point where it understands, first of all, what process it's a part in. But okay, let me see what I'm doing here for a minute. I want to make sure I didn't lose anything. Okay. Oh, I just want to throw this in here. It was a little note that I made that really doesn't apply to anything. In the Bible, they mention the Nephilim. They have said, the Guardians have said, that these were actually giants. They were mutations created by the Anunnaki, the Syrian Anunnaki fathers, that had mixed with the Atlantean and Aryan Earth mothers. So these were actually a real race of beings that walked here too. And there was a series of energy things that happened to the planet that created floods that did wipe them out, and the Elohim did it. Because they created a race of very intelligent beings that were making the human race totally subservient to them. And they got rid of them. So they were real. It was not just a little, Bible story there. That was a real race that was causing a problem with our race. Okay, to begin the process of understanding what plugging in DNA is about and what accelerating your evolution is about, you really cannot do this without discovering a part of yourself called your higher self. All right? No other person can give you the personal, intimate knowledge of your gene code. There's nobody out here that can do that for you. You have to find that through the portion of yourself that's called your higher self. Now, a lot of people say, well, great, I probably have one. What is it? What is it? Where does it live? Am I my higher self? Sometimes we are. This little chart will hopefully give you some idea of the levels of personal identity and where the higher self is located in relation to the rest of us. Okay? All right, right here, I have a chart of the 15-dimensional scale. I just did it square this time. Okay? We have the first harmonic universe here, dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Second harmonic, and I just stacked them easy so it would be easy to show in the diagram. They actually have that flip in there that I covered before. So I just stacked them 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through 15. So we have first harmonic universe, second, third, fourth, and fifth. All right, here we are down in the first harmonic universe. We have our subatomic and molecular components in the first dimensional frequency bands. They're composed of the first dimensional frequency bands. Okay, we have our more complex elemental units that form our bodies, the water in our bodies, the molecules that compose our bodies. They are formed of energy patterns that are part of the D2, second dimensional frequency bands. Then we have our mental awareness, which is actually a quantity of energy that's attached to the other two quantities of energy that is focused within the frequency bands of the third dimension. Okay? Now, it's a little hard to see because this isn't really big enough, but each dimension is further broken down into 4 primary frequency bands. So each one of these, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 15, there are 4 primary frequency bands in each one of those dimensions. There is an ultra-low frequency, a low frequency, a high frequency, and an ultra-high frequency band. They're bands of energy pulsation. Right now, our consciousness is stationed within the mid-range, between the low and high frequency bands. We perceive within this perceptual field. We will perceive the unified field of things that exist within these frequency bands. We won't see as physical matter anything that exists above them. We can only see as some of the physical matter we see is actually some of the frequency bands that are taking place down here. When we look out around us, we're seeing part of this, and we're seeing part of these frequency bands, and when we look under microscopes, we're seeing this down here. Okay? So right now, our consciousness is stationed here. That's our waking I am self. All right? Our higher self is not just, some people say our higher self is our soul and all that. Not really. Our higher self is a bridge between our soul and our conscious identity. Our higher self is the part of our consciousness that, as we speak, is stationed within the ultra-high frequency bands of the third dimension. And it creates a bridge between what's called the astral level of awareness, which is the fourth dimensional aspect of our identity. For we have an aspect of our identity, a part of our energy pattern and our consciousness exists within each one of these 15 dimensions. And the process of our personal evolution is the process of bringing more and more of these higher dimensional aspects of ourselves and our identity into our body and into focus in physicality. So our first step is learning to work with the higher self, because the higher self will help you do a lot of things. All right, it holds a lot of information. It holds the information about your gene codes, and it also has access to the information of the soul levels. If we look at the levels of personality, we covered this a little bit in the second class, but I'll go over it real quick here. You can look at, in the first harmonic, you have what's called the incarnate, and that's us, the part of us that's composed of dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Now the soul is a literal quantity of energy also. It's the part of us that lived on Terra. It's the part of us that is still focused. There's still an energy imprint within the second harmonic universe, even though our bodies are no longer there. There's still an energetic imprint of us left there. It's called our soul. The soul resides within dimensions 4, 5, and 6. There's 3 levels to it. In harmonic 3, which is dimensions 7, 8, and 9, that would be the place where what we call the oversoul is located. And these are all parts of our personal identity that each of us are connected to right now. In fourth harmonic universe, we would have what's called the avatar level of identity. After you get past the 7th dimensional aspect of identity, you are dealing with energy identity. It is no longer able to be housed in a biology or in a matter-clad system. It's pure energy consciousness. It would appear as a blazing sun if you were to be able to see it from here. So our avatar level of identity is in the 4th harmonic universe, and what they call our rishi level of identity is in the 5th harmonic universe. What is interesting is after we get past the 7th level, we are no longer singular identities. We become part of the planetary logos, the planetary spirit, the identity of the planet, and then the galaxy. And eventually, we actually evolve as a consciousness to know ourselves and our I am presence as being the entire 15-dimensional matrix. We know ourselves as the unified field. And it's at that stage that we're ready to go home to God, because we start to realize that identity is one in many, all at the same time. I am is actually a plural concept when you get up into these dimensions. But for right now, we're going to just concentrate on the higher self, because the higher self is the bridge from where we are focused right now on a waking level to all those other aspects of identity in the higher dimensions. And there are many ways. There's many good programs out there besides ours as far as how to work with the higher self. And I suggest everybody look into them because they're exciting. Work with them. You will find results. But we have our own way of, presenting information on how to start getting used to the higher self. Now, when we begin to take steps to actively make conscious contact with the higher self, it does a couple of things to our energy systems. It activates certain chakras. It activates the 5th, the 11th, the 2nd, and the 13th chakra. Now here's the rundown of how the guardians use the chakra layout. The 5th chakra is here, the 11th is here, the 2nd is here, and the 13th is here in the center of the earth. Okay, when we begin to use our minds in a way that we are directing energy to making an energetic conscious link with the higher self, it is activating those 4 chakras. When those 4 chakras activate in synchronization, they begin the reverse mutation process. So without having to understand all about our DNA and what part means what, if we begin to actively make a bridge where we learn to channel our higher selves consciously, where we can learn to dialogue with it, where we can learn to put ourselves in that state and bring that state into our body, it will automatically activate these chakra centers, and that will automatically start dismantling the genetic stop the Elohim put on us a long time ago, which will allow us, once we remove that, once we activate these energy centers, it will naturally start the rebuilding of the DNA process. So working with the higher self is much easier than trying to figure out your DNA and what parts belong to who and how do I do this. The higher self will tell you at your level of awareness what is right for you to do next with this process. It's a part of your identity. When you're dealing with higher self, I can put myself in that state of consciousness sometimes, and it's me. It's not like channeling somebody different. It's me, but it's me at a level of peace, awareness, perspective, cognition that, boy, I wish I had on a daily basis. I look forward to the point where I become my higher self, and I can embody that, because you can do that. You can learn to work with your higher self until you integrate that level of identity with your own identity here. When you get to that point, it will change your sleeping patterns. You will find that you need less sleep. You will find that there's less of a distance between your waking focus and your dreaming focus. You will find the ability to start doing conscious astral projection become much easier. These are all the things that when you start working with your higher self that will happen. But the first stage in working with the higher self, and I think we're going to take a little break before I finish it, because there's some exercises I would like to introduce. It is important to understand the concept of channeling. Okay, and I'm not talking about channeling strange beings from outer space, okay? A lot of us like to do that and some of us don't. But channeling is a very misunderstood concept in this world. It's not about esoteric philosophies and strange beings that might hurt you. Channeling is the innate ability that we have as human beings to read energy signatures. Everything around us right now is composed of energy units called particle, which we got into in the first class. Just knowing that all of this is energy, if you close your eyes and pretend you don't see the shapes and the forms, you'll get a feel there that you can still feel it around you. You can feel the people, maybe not see the shapes, but you feel it. You are feeling the energy fields around you. When people channel, whether they're channeling a plant, because you can channel plants, or channel, they're laughing at me, or if you're channeling some great being from the stars, you're doing the same thing when you're channeling. You are bringing an energy signature into your energy signature, and it is interacting with your energy signature, and it is translating through your neurological structure into language and image patterns that are familiar to your biology. You are taking energy transmissions and translating them into linear language and perception. That is what channeling is about. It's nothing scary. It's nothing, God forbids, it's nothing bad. A lot of people try to make it this big bad thing. It can get you in trouble if you don't know how to use it. Because if you don't know what energy you're bringing into yourself, yes, you can cause yourself some trauma. And anyone that teaches channeling or reading of energy signatures will teach you how to protect your energy fields from doing that. And it's just awareness. It's not that there's big bad things that are going to get you. It's just being aware of your own energy fields and being responsible for what you will allow into them and what you will not. So when we get back into this, I'm going to teach you a little bit. You're probably going to think I'm very silly. I'm going to do a couple exercises with you that are geared toward just getting you used to, first of all, sensing subtle energy, turning your mind into a direction. We usually just don't think about doing this, of sensing subtle energy patterns. We're used to thinking about, I see this and this means this. That if we learn to use our thoughts in a different way, we can learn to sense those energies that we can't see. And as we learn to sense the energy of objects and things here, this will teach us the skills neurologically that we need to begin sensing the different levels of our higher self. We will learn to channel our higher self the more we learn to sense energy, the more we learn to translate energy through our bodies. So for now, I think we better go in before we get rained on. You can take a short break, and then we can, continue with the exercises inside. There's 5 little exercises I'd like to do, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
It's not going to rain. It's just...
Okay, and now that we're back from break, we're going to go into the last phase of the class here. I'm not going to run it too long because a lot of people seem to express being tired or that they want, had to go places this evening. So I'm going to do a couple energy sensing exercises. These exercises are being brought to you in order to help you to begin sensing subtle energy fields. Because if your objective is to begin opening to your higher self and to that portion of yourself that we described before that was in the ultra-high frequency bands of the 3rd dimension, if you want to begin bringing that level of consciousness into your waking consciousness, you do need to be able to know what it means to sense subtle energy. Because at first, when you begin to bring that part of your awareness in, there are sensations in your body that will take place, but they will be very subtle. What you are doing is you are bringing higher frequency energy into the body structure and into your neurological structure. So I want to begin with introducing you to opening to the higher self by teaching you first what it feels like, what I'm talking about when I say subtle energies, and teaching you just a little bit of mental focusing with the little physical props, the crystals that we've each chosen, that will help you get the feel of what a subtle energy is. What we're going to do in the first exercise is we have each selected 2 crystals. They're all of different types, and every person chose one as they felt like they wanted to pick that particular set of crystals. We are going to first, in our exercise, first, I'd like you to get comfortable, but to sit with your spine as straight as possible. Because when your spine is straight, the energy current, it's called the main vertical current, that runs directly through your body and up into the higher chakras and down into the earth, it is much straighter, so the energy moves more clearly. When you are sensing subtle energies, you are bringing energy in through your palms, and you are bringing it up through your arms and into that main vertical current where it gets distributed through other parts of your body cells. And that's where you will get a sense of the energy field that you are sensing. So when your main vertical current is straight, when your back is straight, that holds your main vertical current straight, it will allow a smoother line of transition for the energy that's coming through your palms from the items you're holding to move into your system for translation. So whenever you're doing higher self work, you can do it without adjusting your body posture, but it is very helpful to adjust your body posture to accommodate the most easy flow of energy. So back straight, I sit with my legs crossed, and some people don't. Some people prefer to put their feet on the ground with the chakras in the feet right on the ground. That may be a better method for some people. I'm just very uncomfortable in that position, so I sit this way. So in our exercise, once we get our posture adjusted to a comfortable level of straightness, just take a few deep and relaxing breaths, just to clear ourselves a little. I'm going to start talking a little bit slower now, because I've been talking pretty quickly through the rest of the presentation. Just take a few breaths, just to relax. Now, I would like you to begin by becoming aware of the crystal that you're holding in your left hand. First, I'd like to open your eyes and look at the crystal. Look at it up close. See its contours and its shape and its color. Just become familiar with it in visual terms. Once you've looked at it for a minute or two, then I would like you to close your hand around it, your left hand around it, loosely, where you're not squeezing it, because when you squeeze it, you're letting some of the sensing of the energy. You'll make it so your nerve endings are overstimulated where they won't pick up the more subtle impressions of the energy. And hold it loosely in your left hand. And now close your eyes and draw your attention to that hand and to the crystal it's holding. And for a minute, hold the image in your mind of the crystal that you saw when you were looking at it visually. Breathe deeply. Now imagine a current of energy moving from the middle of your brain, right behind your eyes, right around where your sixth chakra would be. Stream of white light moving down through your main vertical current that runs through the center of your body, down to the center of your breast area, then detouring over to the left and down the left arm, down into the left hand. Picture that line of white energy, creating an energy field around the crystal that you are holding. Try to feel the reality of this energy image that you just created, for you did create an image in energy. You've created an energy signature that you have now wrapped around the energy signature of which the crystal is composed. Envision the white energy that you have created that is now surrounding the crystal. Envision this energy moving itself into the crystal, moving it through the crystal. Every molecule in the crystal is becoming imbued with this white energy that you have created. See the white light moving through the crystal and inward until the crystal seems to be floating within the substance of the energy field you have created. You have now linked the energy field of your own main vertical current with the energy signature of the crystal object. For a moment or two, breathe in deeply, and when you inhale, imagine that you are pulling with you the entire energy signature of the crystal. You are taking the white light you had created and the crystal which is now contained within it. Visualize it moving up your arm, through your palm and then up your arm as you inhale, and bring it into the center of your body, right around the breast area, in the area of the heart chakra. Visualize the crystal there, within the center of the heart chakra. Now, from the crystal's position within the heart chakra, push out the energy field that you have made and expand the pattern of the crystal's energy through every cell in your body. You are sending the cells and the molecules and the DNA within the cells an impression of the energy signature that you are trying to read. Now, relax your mind a bit and gently focus your awareness, not crisply but very gently, as if you were looking at something out of the corner of your mental eye. Focus your energy toward the physical crystal that is in your hand. Try to feel the energy, the reality of its energy field. It is unique. Every item that you will ever pick up in your hand is unique from every other. It has its own very special energy signature. Feel the energy of the energy signature vibrating in your palm. Let it come to you. Become aware of the subtle energy field that sits in your hand with the object. Feel the weight of the object sitting upon your palm. Feel the texture of the object as it rests against your skin. Is it rough or smooth? Is it cool or warm? Become aware of these sensations. It may be necessary to slow your mind down a little, to focus on, I will now notice temperature. I will now notice texture. When you slow your mind down and point it at observing specific qualities, you will get a more accurate reading of the energy signature that you are trying to understand. So for a moment now, be with the crystal that you hold in your left hand. Try to feel its reality as strongly as you can. Try to feel yourself as part of it, and it is part of you. It will become more real to you as you do so. We may not have time this evening to reach the level of awareness in which you would begin to feel the merging of your energy field and that of the crystal. For sometimes it takes time to train the mind to loosen itself and loosen its focus in this way. But for now, just become aware of the sensation of the crystal. You may feel heat radiating from it. Some of you may feel coolness radiating from it. It depends on the crystal that you hold. After you have been with the crystal for a moment, then switch your attention to the crystal that you hold in your right hand. When you are alone, if you should ever like to try this exercise, you can do the same version where you send the line of white light down to surround it and then bring the energy signature into your body. But for now, just the intent to do so will be a shortcut that we can use. We will focus on just the feel of the crystal in your right hand. Feel its weight, feel its texture, feel its temperature. Feel if there is a fuzziness of energy that you might feel around it, for most crystals do emanate such a fuzziness of field. Be with the crystal in your right hand for a moment. Once you have a feeling for the sense of the energy in the crystal in your right hand, then I would like you to bring both hands together in front of the solar plexus area with both crystals there. Just below the breast level where the third chakra will be. Breathe in a time or two, just to relax. Breathe the energy of the crystals into your third chakra. Now rest your hands comfortably, wherever is comfortable for you, but preferably with the crystals close together. Try to feel the difference now between the energy signatures of the crystal in your left hand and of that in your right hand, where there will be a distinct difference, but it may take you a bit of time to be able to detect that difference. First you may notice weight. One feels heavier than the other. Then you may notice temperature. One is warmer or cooler than the other. What I would like you to focus your attention on identifying, after you have identified temperature and weight, is the sense of energy movement. There will be a slight tingling, maybe ever so slight if you are not used to this and sensitized to this. There will be an ever so slight tingling in the palms of the hands where the crystals sit. Try to become aware and identify which crystal has a faster moving rate of pulsation or vibration. The fuzziness feels like it is moving a little faster than the other. For one will be faster than the other. No two crystals have the same movement rate of their energy fields. If you can identify which crystal has the faster moving field of energy around it, you have taught the neurological structure and the nerve endings in the palms of your hand a new trick. You have taught them to become sensitized to vibrational movement. You will be able to tell which crystal has a higher vibrational pattern once you can sense the rate of movement. Once you learn to do this with crystals, and crystals are very good because they carry a very strong energy signature with them, so they are very good teachers in that other objects you may hold may not radiate a field strong enough for you to sense when you are just beginning. But if you can learn to differentiate between the rate of vibration, that very subtle energy movement that is radiating from each of the crystal objects, you can also apply this to many other things. You can, once your palms have been sensitized to identifying energy signatures in this way, you can hold two food items in a grocery store. You can hold two tomatoes of the exact same visual appearance, and you can find out which one has more life force energy within it, because your palms will be able to feel the fuzziness, and which fuzziness moves faster than the other. This lesson applies to the higher self, for once you begin to distinguish the very simple differences between vibrational speed of energy signatures, you can first learn to identify the basic feeling of the vibrational speed of your consciousness as you know it on a day-to-day basis. And you will be able to identify when the energies from your higher self begin to enter your system, for they will feel to around the areas of the head and the shoulders, and sometimes in the brain itself. They will feel just like that faster moving field from the crystal that vibrated just a little faster. You will feel a slight difference, a slight tingling. If you do not become sensitized to noticing these very subtle differences first, you may find that when you start working with, I want to open to my higher self, I bring my higher self in, your higher self will respond and it will begin sending more energy to you. But if you're not used to sensing the energy signatures, you may interpret this as fatigue or stress or jitteriness. You'll feel this energy bouncing around. It may make you feel a bit confused or unfocused. You won't realize that it is in response to your request to work with the higher self. So if you become aware of the differences between energy fields and their movement, even on a subtle level, you will begin to be able to notice when you feel that extra influx of energy coming in around the shoulders, around the head, around sometimes even the solar plexus, when the higher self is responding to your request for more communication. Eventually, with energy sensing techniques such as this, you will learn to translate the energy signatures you are getting into linear language and images. You will be able to take each of the crystals and hear them talk. For you will take that energy signature and run it through your neurological structure. And your neurological structure will put on the language patterns and patterns of imagery that make sense to your conscious mind. That's how we will learn to channel a crystal. That's how you can learn to channel a plant, another person, a guide from another universe. And that's also how you learn to channel your higher self. It's all about energy signatures. So for now, we'll bring us back to focusing out here in the outer world. And I'd like to just talk for a moment to see if anybody had any experiences with the feelings of the crystals. Did people notice the differences?
I did.
Okay, how many people noticed the difference in the feelings of the crystals between the two of them?
Yeah, there's a change in the heat or the warmth that I feel. It's just more warm on the left side
Okay.
than on the right. There's still a little bit more like little distraction, from the so many things going on and the extraneous. Probably this we could try to learn this on an everyday basis.
Yes.
And follow, the technique
Right.
in a quiet environment.
Oh, it is much better to do it that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring some of these exercises to you so that you would have a game to take home with you.
Right.
That if you want to develop the sensitivity in your palms, first of all, which is very good for people interested in healing. If you want to begin to learn to teach yourself, I can't teach you, but you can teach yourself how to sense these energies. I can tell you ways to learn how to do it, but I can't do it for you or make it happen, but you can. This is one of the ways you can begin. And once you begin working with crystals, if you take them home and play with them, or get your own and play with them, you will find that after you feel the differences and you start to feel the uniqueness, you start to feel the fuzziness of the energy field, you start to feel the vibration, then it will take you further. You may start getting spontaneous ideas, words, phrases, images. They may start to come to you. And you may not at first realize the crystal is communicating things to you. As you are reading the crystal's energy, it is giving you information. When I first encountered crystals, I didn't know that this could be done. I didn't know that they could talk. Well, they can. Anything with an energy signature has something to say. And whether or not we can hear it depends on whether we can translate that energy signature through our neurological structure into a language pattern that makes sense to us. And I happen to be very naturally, I wouldn't say good at it, it just kind of happens with me. So I picked up my first crystal once, and it literally spoke to me. It said, "You know we talk, don't you?" I was like, I must be losing my mind. I just heard a crystal talk. Crystals don't talk, and said, yes, we do. And I understand now, it was my consciousness and my higher self moving itself through the energy pattern of the crystal and bringing some of the reality of the crystal's consciousness into words that I would understand. The crystals, which we don't realize usually, are aware of us, just like we're aware of them, in a different way, but they perceive energy signatures too. Everything does. The plants are aware of us, we're aware of them. But most of us don't think about, they know we're here too. They're sensing us while we're sensing them. But there are many, many wonderful things that you can learn, and that things like crystals will help you to learn when you're working with your higher self. If you get yourself a crystal at home that you feel comfortable with, and start saying, okay, crystal, let's get to know each other, and try some of these techniques. Try to feel the energy and the reality. If we remember that all units of energy that compose both biological beings and also inanimate objects are composed of particuli units. And particuli units are units of consciousness of the substance of the unison. They're units of consciousness of God. They're conscious too. It's consciousness interacting with consciousness. We begin to look at inanimate objects like a crystal much differently. They have a story to tell, they have information to give to us, and some of them are programmed from the ones in the second harmonic. They've left many crystals here. So this is just one exercise that if you feel inclined to do so at home, get some crystals and come to know them in energy terms. Come to feel them and work with them, and they will teach you. Ask your higher self to show you how to work with the crystals. Become sensitized to the crystals in order to become more sensitized to your higher self. And it will become a growing process that will happen naturally for you. It will open intuitively with you. And I just wanted to do this one tonight so you get the sense, the difference in energy fields, because they really are there. If you can get, when you're using two crystals, if you can get to the point where you can really feel that fuzziness in your hands, and really feel that, hey, this fuzziness is different than this fuzziness, you're learning something. You're really sensitizing. And you can take that further and further and further to where you don't need a crystal in your hand. You can go over to a plant, a group of plants, and go like this. And you can feel which ones vibrate higher. You can feel cold spots and hot spots, which ones need something, which ones are doing fine, where the energy is being stored. Once you sensitize, you can learn to do many things out here. And you can also learn to differentiate when you feel energy moving into your system from your higher self. You can notice it's there. You can also tell the difference between what is your higher self and what is something else possibly trying to communicate with you. And that's very important, because as you open yourself to wanting to integrate your soul, you have to move your consciousness into the realms of the fourth dimension. There are many things in the fourth dimension, just as there are many things in this dimension. Some of the things you don't want to deal with. You learn to sense energy. You can learn to feel when something is pushing in on your energy field that you don't like. And you can learn to build energy in the form of light within your own auric field that will block out energies you don't like. And as you open to channel your higher self, and then later you can learn to channel many other things and communicate with the universe, basically. You need to learn these protective devices, and energy sensing is the absolute first lesson that needs to be learned, because you will need to know how to feel the difference between energy signatures out here, but also especially when you begin working inwardly. You need to know if it's a sub-personality you're talking to, because we all have them. They come out of our cellular memories. They may be incarnational, they may be us when we were 4, that something got stuck and there's still a pattern left there. And you'll learn to tell the difference. Am I talking to my higher self, a sub-personality, or is this a communication from some being that's not exactly me? And it's all in energy sensing. So this is just one exercise you can use to begin the process. There are many good schools of thought out there that will help you learn those processes. But I would just stress that becoming aware of the need to learn that is one of the most important things you could do for yourselves in your own spiritual growth. Learn to sense energy. I don't know if everybody's tired now. A few people look a little chilly. Is it getting too chilly out here?
No,
Yeah. There's a couple other things we could do, but we've kind of gone pretty long tonight. So, are we? Yeah, unless we can do some of the other ones at another time. There's a bunch of exercises we can do, but this is a good one for now. I think we've run long enough. If we. Okay. So I'd just like to wrap it.
Do you have another kind of one without crystals?
I probably have about 6 different ones, but I think for now I'm just sensing the group energy. It's kind of like it's stretching out now and yawning. So not the people, but the energy. You have a question?
Was Zara here tonight?
Yeah.
Thank you.
She always comes in on the meditations.
Thank you.
Is there anything she'd like to say to us tonight?
No, we're not going to do that tonight. No, she's just observing tonight, and she handles the meditations. We have an agreement that when Azara comes through and helps me with the classes, her job is to just run the meditations off the top of my head. So I don't know what the meditations are going to be. I just participate as a student, and she kind of runs them through me, and I get to do it with you, which is kind of nice. Yeah, so we're not going to do any, channeling sessions or anything like that. So I hope that the class was helpful to everybody and informational. I would like to put more together on working with the higher self, because there's a lot of different techniques that can be learned that will help you. One of the things that she'd like to assign for homework, actually, for people who are really interested in starting this process, it's a form of creative writing. It's called stream of consciousness writing. If you go into this type of exercise, get a journal app, get a notebook and a pen and some quiet time, and say, okay, I have a higher self, huh? Well, let me talk to my higher self here. Okay, higher self, I'm hailing you. I'd like to talk with you. Will you talk with me? And at first you'll find a whole bunch of thoughts coming up, like, this is silly. I'm talking to myself and I'm expecting an answer, oh boy. Yeah, you'll have to move through that point where your ego self is saying, like, this is silly, we're not conditioned to believe in this higher self to begin with. Get that out of the way a little, and then let the stream of consciousness start to move through you. Ask your higher self a question on anything. Doesn't matter what it is, but a serious one that you don't have the answer to. And write it down, and say, okay, higher self, what do you think about this? If you play this game with yourself for a while, it may be instant or it may take a little while, but you will start to find a vein of answer coming, even though it's not your main channel of focus. You'll be like, oh cool, I didn't know I knew that. Where'd that come from? You will begin to process another channel, and that's why they call it channeling. It's like having a radio or a TV, where you're switched on to one station, but we can operate like those TVs that have the little boxes where you can watch several different channels at once. Our brains can do this. We can learn to bring in some of those other channels. Creative writing is a very good way to do it, where you ask questions of the higher self and just spontaneously let whatever comes to mind flow out the pen. Bless you. And don't be surprised if in some of you feel a shudder run down through your arm and the pen want to go by itself. Let it go. Nothing's taking over your body. It's not possession. It's your higher self energy coming through and tapping into the neurological structure. Okay. When you're working with your higher self with that intent, you will be protected. there is a veil of protection that goes with this. You haven't bridged the gap into the fourth dimension yet, so you don't have to worry about getting in trouble or running into astral problems while you're working with just the higher self. It's only when you start expanding into the incarnational memory and the soul memory that you have to cross that bridge. The higher self will get you across that bridge. So feel safe working with it. Trust it. Let it come out and play. And sometimes you'll find subpersonalities, me at 4 or me at 6, or maybe incarnational personalities will start to flow some information through. But if you can use this homework, the creative writing process, you might be amazed at what comes through and how much information you have. Questions you never thought you had answers to, you may find the answers to, and even more. And it's a wonderful interior guidance tool. Once you can access that level of verbal translation, either in writing. For me, the writing came first. It was much easier for it to come through me and into writing than through me into speaking, or even telepathically listening to my higher self or other beings that communicate through my higher self. So it's the beginning of the process, and I thought you might like to try it. So I guess we're done for the evening. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
Good night.